Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back for a series of lectures on public opinion and mass media in American politics. We're going to begin with public opinion. As we've talked about before, if we are a democracy that is dependent upon free elections, a free media that guide the citizenry, then the citizenry has a responsibility to exert themselves, to participate, to become involved, to express their views. And the views of the public are what we call public opinion. As a political scientist, I would obviously encourage you to take the advice of that great political theorist and world spokeswoman, Madonna, and express yourself, but express it politically, where I think it's most importantly, where it can have real impact. Well, why is the study of public opinion so important to an introductory class in American government? One reason is that the policies of the country are often at odds with what the citizens believe. I'll give you a famous story. A famous story. Don't sit back and relax. Just reflect on this. To show you an example. When I was working in the U.S. Congress, President Reagan was in office. The Reagan administration's Department of Agriculture, which is over the school lunch program. You know, the folks who oversee the quality of so many agricultural related programs and concerns. Well, the food lunch program is one of those, and there are certain requirements. But in an effort to cut the budget, to reduce government spending, the Reagan administration's, and President Reagan shouldn't be necessarily blamed for this, although he could be held responsible, the Department of Agriculture school lunch program issued new guidelines. And think about these guidelines as if you were, and some of you are, a parent. They announced that they were going to change the qualification and categories of vegetables. Most controversial of those changes was to call ketchup a vegetable. Therefore, if you had ketchup on your French fries, at school that counted as a vegetable. You can imagine how many parents responded. As you guessed, they were not happy about that change. The policies of the Department of Agriculture were at odds with the views of the citizenry. And what happened is the proposed change in vegetable qualifications, characteristics for school lunches was thrown out. They couldn't enforce that policy. There was too much of backlash. The policy of the government was at odds with what citizens wanted or thought was in the best interest of the country. Well, let's talk generally about public opinion. Public opinion allows government to accomplish its goals by listening to the citizens. It also allows the citizens to put sort of a check on government as well. Now, what the founders wanted, and you see this especially in Madison's Federalist 10 and Federalist 51 as examples, is they wanted to control factions. They didn't want too many publics, too many interests, too much involvement, divisive involvement of citizenry. They thought that might distract. So there's always been some tension about how to use public opinion, what is legitimate public opinion. And the Constitution itself is not a poll. It's a device that was designed to protect liberty. And that's the fundamental goal of the American Constitution. It also allows citizens a chance to protest policies that are at odds with the Constitution and their own beliefs. Another fundamental issue that we encounter when we look at polls and when we try to use them to shape government policy and decision making is that polls aren't perfectly reliable. And you'll see some examples in the PowerPoints and the other materials with this lecture topic and course topic that go along with this. Sometimes people just don't tell the truth when they take a poll. We talk about this more thoughtfully and describe it more thoughtfully in the PowerPoints. Also, political scientists generally believe that government is more responsive to the elites, people who have the most influence, the most resources, than they are to the average citizen. So this affects the role of public opinion as well. Well, let's talk about what is public opinion. How do we define it? How are we to make sense of it? Especially when, on one hand, Americans tend to be uninformed on most issues, are relatively uninformed. That deserves some statement deserves more scrutiny. Secondly, public opinion changes and is unstable. If you look, for example, at many recent political campaigns where someone's running for office, they're very popular, but then they lose the election. My favorite example is 1992 and 1991, the first Gulf War. President George W. Bush 41, was during the time of that war, his popularity ratings were in the area of 93%. Imagine what it would be like to walk around campus with a 93% approval rating. I mean, you can almost walk on water, as they say. But conditions worsened, and when President George W. Bush stood for re-election in 1992, he lost to William Jefferson Clinton. His public opinion rating dropped so much that the American people lost confidence in him and his presidency, as well as many other factors that were involved, that he actually lost the election. So citizens changed their views. Another consideration when we begin to look at public opinion is that there are many interests, many issues in which the American citizenry are relatively uninterested. A good example of this is, even though what affects us most directly, the economy, Americans tend to be less knowledgeable of the economy than they do of national politics. So we're going to return to this in part 2 of this lecture.